I have platinumed Bloodborne, and I have spent countless hours in the game. I see that there are so many hidden meanings and symbolism in the game that most casual players miss. Bloodborne is not just a game. It is a warning, a big warning, to us, humanity. I want to deep dive into these deeper meanings. I will draw parallels to religions, real historical events, and Lovecraftian stories. Without further ado, let's begin. At its core, Bloodborne's main theme is about the danger of false salvation. False salvation happens when humans are desperate for a way out and take an escape they do not fully understand. Because they do not fully understand it, they become easy targets for deception. So when an inhuman force, like the devil or the Great Ones in Bloodborne, promises escape or power, humans take the offer without seeing the hidden consequences. Many of the major characters in Bloodborne are victims of this false salvation. The most obvious example of this false salvation is the old blood itself. In the Bible, we know that healing is the main miracle of Jesus Christ. Jesus uses healing miracles to show his status as the Son of God. So healing and divinity are basically linked. To have the power to heal is to have the power of God. Just like in the Bible, the Healing Church uses the miracle of healing to show everyone that they have found the literal power of God in the old blood. Lawrence sold Gehrman on the idea that this blood was a medical miracle, a shortcut to evolving beyond human weakness. The people of Gehrman themselves chose to embrace this miracle as it brought prosperity to the city. In fact, the whole city of Gehrman became so addicted to the blood that, as the pungent blood cocktail description says, blood is produced more than alcohol in Gehrman because it is more intoxicating. But here's the catch. The blood didn't save anyone. It just turned them into beasts over time. It was a false salvation. False salvation itself is a core concept in many religions and popular stories as well, and this is especially apparent in Christianity. As we know, there are so many hidden parallels between Bloodborne and Christianity. And not just that, Bloodborne smartly ingrained them into gameplay mechanics. For example, Bloodborne uses the word chalice a lot. As we know, in Christianity, a chalice is used to perform the ritual of the Eucharist. We also use a literal chalice to perform rituals, chalice rituals. We use these rituals to create chalice dungeons. Also, we drink wine as the blood of Christ during the Eucharist. Well, in Bloodborne, we also use ritual blood to perform these chalice rituals. Speaking of blood and blood healing, the parallel between them is even clearer. According to Christian doctrine, Longinus is the Roman soldier who pierced Jesus' side on the cross after his death. Longinus was blind at that time, but when the blood from Jesus' wound splashed onto his eyes, his blindness was instantly cured. In other words, the blood of God healed him. Sounds familiar? Yes, we literally use blood for healing as well. The Great Ones are inhuman cosmic beings that exist far beyond human understanding or morality. You can imagine the Great Ones are like Satan or the devil in Christianity. And just like the devil, they need humans to make some kind of contract. To understand my point, let's take a look at the lore of Gehrman here, and how false salvation ends up trapping him in the hunter's dream. We can piece together what happened to Gehrman based on the clues left in the game, so let's take a look. When the side effect of the old blood began spreading in Gehrman, the Healing Church needed some hunters to contain it. During the initial beast outbreak, the church tried to cover up and keep it hidden from the public. They didn't want the Healing Church's name to be attached to the hunt itself, so they needed to hire private hunters from outside the church. Gehrman is the original founder of the Old Hunter Workshop. When the outbreak started, Gehrman and his band of old hunters helped to hunt the beasts and contain the outbreak in secret. Think of them as a group of mercenaries secretly hired by the church. This kind of reminds me of how the Vatican hires the Swiss Guard for protection. Just a thought. Included in the hunt was Maria, Gehrman's favorite student. It is heavily implied that Gehrman had a very strong affection toward Maria. Her suicide later is one of the main reasons for Gehrman's downfall, but we'll get there shortly. At some point, the scale of the beast scourge became too big, and it became impossible to hide the truth from the public. So, the Healing Church began formalizing their own hunters, led by Ludwig, the Holy Blade. These effectively made Gehrman and his band of old hunters obsolete. The old hunters were disbanded. It is implied that Gehrman was very disappointed with this decision, as he and his old hunters lost their purpose, but that was just the beginning of his downfall. As I mentioned, Maria was Gehrman's favorite student, but she was more than just that. He had a borderline mania toward her. While initially believing in the mission, Maria was consumed by heavy guilt over the various massacres done by the church, especially the Fishing Hamlet massacre. Overwhelmed by guilt, she eventually withdrew from the hunt and ultimately took her own life. We will explore her story in more detail as it becomes more relevant later in the video. Because of her death and the disbandment of the old hunters, Gehrman was left as a desperate old man with no purpose in life. In his desperation, Gehrman went to Lawrence, and Lawrence gave him a choice: to gain an audience with the Great One Moon Presence and create Hunter's Dream. There, he can continue the hunt and be with Maria once more. Wait, how do we know this? Let's take a look carefully. First, you can see this letter at lecture hall. It says, "The nameless moon presence beckoned by Lawrence and his associates, pale blood." But wait, you notice the word associates here? So Lawrence was not alone when moon presence beckoned upon him. But who are these associates? The answer is in the description of third of umbilical cord, located in the abandoned old workshop. The third umbilical cord precipitated the encounter with the pale moon, which beckoned the hunters and conceived the hunter's dream. The pale moon here is, of course, referring to the moon presence itself. And it says that this pale moon beckoned the hunter and conceived the hunter's dream. We can infer from the letter and description here that the person who makes this deal is none other than Lawrence and Gehrman himself. By the way, yes, I know this is Vicar Amelia and not Lawrence, but we don't have an official picture of Lawrence in the game. And I don't want to use this monstrosity to picture Lawrence, so yeah, she will do. The moon presence appears in front of Gehrman with a promise of salvation. As part of the contract, the moon presence offers Gehrman two things that he really wanted in his life at that point. First, the return of the glory days of the old hunters. And second, the chance to see and be with Maria again. Wait, how do we know all of this? Well, there are a few hints placed in the game. First, we can see that the entire Hunter's Dream workshop is an exact copycat of the abandoned old workshop. The original workshop itself was left abandoned in the waking world. Gehrman wants to have that place back to remind him of his glory days as the first hunter. Speaking of which, you notice that the name of the place is Hunter's Dream. Of course, it could refer to this place being in a dream-like dimension, outside of reality. But if you think about it, it could also refer to this place as the literal Hunter's Dream. The old workshop is Gehrman's pride and joy, and so it is his dream to see this place restored to its former greatness. Second, it is implied through item descriptions and interactions that Gehrman has strong affection toward Maria, his favorite student. As we described earlier, one item description even mentions a borderline mania toward her. And yes, Gehrman literally builds a life-size doll statue of Lady Maria, which we can find in the abandoned old workshop. I mean, at this point, there are so many memes about Gehrman's obsession with the doll and Maria. Well, I am gonna leave it at that. So we can imagine, when Maria committed suicide, it really broke his soul. And he created the doll based on her likeness. So, the moon presence offers to bring back his golden age and Maria. Happy ending, right? Well, not really. Remember my point before about false salvation? The wishes were granted, but they were lies. The doll, for example, is not Maria. The doll is a hollow imitation, with a completely different personality. submissive, polite, and vacant. She lacks the fire and spirit that made Maria who she was. Even his glory days were a lie. Instead of regaining his life's purpose as a hunter, he has become a slave to the moon presence, shackled to a workshop that was once his pride and joy, but has now, ironically, become his prison. Gehrman and every hunter that passes through this dream, including you, are all just slaves being used by the moon presence to carry out its own hidden agenda. It is heavily implied that Lawrence promised to get him out of the dream at some point. In rare dialogue, we can actually hear him crying in his sleep, begging Lawrence to unshackle him.
Oh, Lawrence, Master Willem, somebody help me. Unshackle me, please. Anybody. I've had enough of this dream. The night blocks all sight. Oh, somebody, please.
The false salvation is the first main warning to us, but the second, and arguably darker warning in Bloodborne, is about what happens when salvation becomes institutionalized. I regularly upload high-quality gaming analysis on my channel, especially about Soulsborne games. Please consider to subscribe to the channel. Your support really matters to me. Once the Healing Church had complete control, once Gehrman was totally dependent on its miracle cure, the mission quickly changed from healing people to controlling them. It highlights a brutal reality. When an institution believes it owns the truth, it eventually believes it owns the people, and they become more willing to commit atrocities in the name of religion. There are many famous examples of this throughout human history, across almost all major religions. For example, once the Catholic Church as an institution got absolute power after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD, they morphed into an oppressive regime, willing to use any means necessary, from torture to genocide, to maintain their grip. Probably the most famous example of this is the Catholic Holy Crusades. In 1095, Pope Urban II gained authoritarian power. He then authorized a massive state-sponsored war of religious conquest, which we call the Holy Crusades. The Church effectively weaponized the faith. It commanded people to murder their enemies, promising instant salvation in return. The result was 2 centuries of genocidal violence, all justified in the name of God. Historians estimate the death toll of these conflicts ranges from 1 million to 3 million people. Or, look at the witch trials across the Western world, where local churches and authorities systematically hunted and killed tens of thousands of their own citizens to eliminate spiritual impurity. There are actually so many references to witch trials in Bloodborne. You see, the huntsmen in Bloodborne are an intentional reference to real-life witch hunts. They are using pitchforks and other farming tools during the hunt. Most of the historical huntsmen were also not professional soldiers, but just ordinary citizens who had been brainwashed into a religious paranoia. They don't have soldiers' weapons like fancy swords or spears, so it makes sense for them to use whatever equipment they have in their ordinary jobs, like pitchforks or sickles. You can also see these burned stakes here in the middle of the hunt. The same burned stakes were heavily used during the witch trials. Basically, the hunting in Bloodborne itself is a big reference to the witch trials. The Healing Church slowly became a corrupt institution as it gained more power over the city. There are so many examples of this, but let's see how the event unfolds in the eyes of Lady Maria to continue her story from before. These atrocities were the cause of her downfall and her tragic suicide. Lady Maria was the best student of Gehrman and one of the original old hunters. She was of noble birth and held a position of royalty in Cainhurst, but Maria deliberately gave up this privileged status in Cainhurst to join the hunt, because she genuinely believed it served a just and good purpose. But her belief in the integrity of the church started to crumble when she saw the oppression they committed. She witnessed the research hall, a place of horrific, systematic experimentation. The church was directly torturing its own patients for scientific gain and forbidden cosmic power. The sick were used as disposable test subjects. The ultimate goal of this violence was to force human evolution and make contact with the Great Ones. Yet, even within this horror, Maria still tried to act with decency. As evidenced, the victim still recognized her inherent goodness and desperately called out her name for help.
Lady Maria, Lady Maria, please take my hand. Please help me. Don't let me drown.
But the final breaking point for her was the Fishing Hamlet massacre. This was a direct, genocidal assault led by the hunters, including Maria and Gehrman, aimed at the indigenous people of the coastal village. The attack was initiated by the Healing Church, who sought to capture the power of the Great One, Kos, who had washed ashore in the hamlet. In this brutal raid, the hunters executed the villagers, culminating in a horrific violation of the local population and the subsequent dissection of the Great One. The horror of the massacre, commanded by her own church, was too much for her. She felt so ashamed, and ultimately discarded her trick weapon, the rakuyo. She threw it down the well in the fishing hamlet. You can actually find the weapon itself deep within the well. Yes, that infamous well. If you are brave enough to fight the two incredibly annoying and aggressive shark giants that guard it. So she then returned to the astral clock tower and took her own life. Wait, how do we know that she killed herself? Well, there is a lot of evidence placed in the game. You can see a deep cut and blood dripping from her wrists, suggesting she might have cut herself. You can also see a glass of wine next to her corpse. So, she might have drunk poison? Well, whatever happened, she couldn't forgive herself, so she took her own life. Lady Maria has become the victim of a corrupt religious institution. When a religious institution's oppression goes too far, people will not just sit and watch. They will get up and fight back. And what follows is a bloody rebellion. This is the last warning of Bloodborne I want to discuss in this video. Unfortunately, the resistance to tear down a corrupt institution often requires a level of savagery that matches the evil it seeks to destroy. And it will only cause destruction to both sides. There is no real winner in war, after all. We can see it throughout the history of humanity. But boy, do we ever learn. And this bloody rebellion in Bloodborne comes in the form of the hunt itself, our hunt. Let's break down what I mean here, one by one. Have you ever asked yourself, what is actually the purpose of our main character here? Why is our main character in Gehrman to begin with? I saw popular theories that say our main character is just a regular foreigner looking for medical treatment in Gehrman. I kinda disagree with this. Well, remember the first cutscene in the game? It is very clear that not only do you know about the existence of pale blood, but you also specifically come to the city looking for it. If you are just a regular foreigner, how did you know about pale blood? We know that pale blood is not common knowledge for regular people in Gehrman. We can see this from our discussion with one of the first NPCs we meet in Gehrman here.
Pale blood, you say? Never heard of it.
This shows that you are not just an innocent patient. You are a man with a mission. But what is the mission? When you wake up, there is a note right beside you. It says, "Seek the pale blood to transcend the hunt." What is the meaning of this mission? Well, let's take a look at the first cutscenes here once again. Yes, I'm talking about this scene right here. The dream you had after the blood minister gave you the old blood. This beast crawling towards you here symbolizes the old blood's beasthoods trying to take over your body. And when the beast comes to you, it suddenly burns. Why does it burn? I think it means your body rejects the old blood itself. But why? What is so special about your body? The game never directly tells you about this. But we know that Bloodborne is heavily inspired by Lovecraftian mythos. So let's take a look at those, because we can draw some heavy parallel here. I want to talk about a Lovecraftian story called The Shadow over Innsmouth. The Shadow over Innsmouth tells the story of an unnamed narrator. The narrator is a student who comes to the isolated coastal town of Innsmouth looking for data regarding his own family lineage and heritage. This investigation leads him directly to the esoteric order of Dagon. The esoteric order of Dagon is a local cult that worships a race of underwater monsters called Deep Ones. They made a deal with the town. The gods give the people unlimited gold and fish, but in exchange, the humans have to breed with fish monsters called Deep Ones. So the town gets rich, but everyone slowly turns into a fish monster. You see the parallel here? The city in this story also falls to false salvation, and they also slowly turned into beast. You can see the parallel with the healing church and the old blood here. The narrator's actions also ended up causing the destruction of the Order of Dagon. Just like how the action of your main character causes the destruction of the healing church in the game. At the end of the story, the narrator discovers that his great-grandmother was a pure-blood Deep One, named, well, I won't even try to spell this name. She mated with his human great-grandfather, Captain Obed Marsh. So the narrator himself is actually a Deep One hybrid. He will transform into a Deep One himself at some point. Initially, he was so depressed. He even bought a pistol and considered killing himself. But ultimately, he decided to fully embrace it. At the end of the story, he freed his cousin, who is, curiously, also named Lawrence. He and his cousin ultimately decided to embrace their fate as Deep Ones. Now, let's go back to Bloodborne. My theory is that the main character of Bloodborne also has pale blood in their blood. That is the only explanation as to why the beast was burned, because your blood rejects them. And that is also why you go to Gehrman looking for pale blood. You are specifically looking for an answer, just like the narrator in that story. Somehow along the way, you discover the only way to reach your goal is through the hunt. And just like with that Lovecraftian story, you go on your journey to destroy the healing church and become a great one. So yeah, you do that. Let's look at the main symbol of Bloodborne, the Hunter's Mark. If you look at the Bloodborne symbol closely, does it remind you of something? Yes, to me, that looks like an inverted cross. We have explored before that there are many parallels between Bloodborne and Christianity. The inverted cross symbol is most commonly associated with the Antichrist movement. It is the natural enemy of the church. And just like that, our hunt is also a rebellion against the corrupted church authority and the great ones themselves. Our mission is to destroy the church and become a great one. By reaching this true ending, you have finally reached your goal, and the cycle comes to an end. Or so you thought. But what happens next? Are we actually going to save Gehrman? Or will we bring more destruction to the city? Well, we never know. Unless, they decide to make a sequel. By the way, the Lovecraftian connection goes much deeper than that. I was going to make a longer deep dive about this and its philosophy here, but it became way too long for this video. So I had to cut it and make a separate video. Please subscribe to see that content when it drops soon. I am sure you will love it. I regularly upload high-quality gaming analysis on my channel, especially about Soulsborne games. Please consider to subscribe to the channel. Your support really matters to me. Thanks for watching, and may you find your worth in the waking world.